Success is not a destination you reach once and then you're done. Success is a continuous journey that requires consistent effort day in and day out. And on that journey, you're going to face resistance. You're going to face difficulty. You're going to face days when you just don't feel like showing up. And it's in these moments that your ability to force yourself to keep going will determine your destiny. I remember a young man who came to me once and said, "Mr. Rohn, I just don't have the motivation I used to have. When I first started my business, I was on fire. I could work 14 hours a day. But now I struggle to put in even 8. What's wrong with me?" And I told him, "Nothing's wrong with you. You're just experiencing what everyone experiences. The question isn't whether you'll feel resistance. The question is whether you'll push through it." Let me tell you something fascinating about human psychology. We tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in a day, but we drastically underestimate what we can accomplish in a year. Why is that? Because we don't appreciate the power of small, consistent actions over time. We want the big victory today, but real success doesn't work that way. Real success comes from showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it. I've studied the lives of many successful people, and I've found that they all share this common trait, the ability to force themselves to keep going. They understand that motivation isn't something you wait for, it's something you create through action. They understand that discipline isn't about doing something when it's easy, it's about doing what needs to be done, especially when it's hard. You know, in ancient times, a warrior going into battle wouldn't just rely on their initial surge of courage. They knew that in the heat of battle, fear would come, pain would come, doubt would come. So they trained themselves to keep fighting despite these feelings. And in our modern world, we must do the same. We must train ourselves to keep going despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the resistance that inevitably comes. I want to share with you a truth that changed my life many years ago. Are you ready for it? Here it is. Your feelings will lie to you. They'll tell you that you can't go on. They'll tell you that you need a break. They'll tell you that it's too hard. But here's the secret. You don't have to believe them. Your feelings are valid, but they aren't always accurate. Just because you feel like quitting doesn't mean you should quit. Just because you don't feel motivated doesn't mean you can't take action. Success isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about taking action regardless of how you feel. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore your feelings completely. That would be unwise. Your feelings provide valuable information. If you're feeling burnout, that might be a sign that you need to adjust your approach. But what I am saying is that you shouldn't let your feelings be the final authority on your actions. You must learn to override them when necessary. Let me tell you about discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't want to do it. It's getting up early to work on your business when you'd rather sleep in. It's making those uncomfortable sales calls when you'd rather check email. It's putting in the extra hour of practice when everyone else has gone home. And here's the interesting thing about discipline. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Every time you force yourself to keep going when you want to quit, you're strengthening your discipline muscle. And over time, what once seemed impossible becomes manageable, and what once seemed manageable becomes easy. There's a concept in physics called inertia. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest, and objects in motion tend to stay in motion. The same is true for people. When you're inactive, it's hard to get started, but once you're in motion, it's easier to keep going. That's why the hardest part is often just beginning. Once you've started, momentum takes over, and it becomes easier to continue. But here's the key. You have to start. You can't wait until you feel ready, because that day might never come. You have to force yourself to take that first step, and then the next, and then the next. And before you know it, you've built momentum that carries you forward. I've found that there are 3 main barriers that prevent people from forcing themselves to keep going: fear, comfort, and immediate gratification. Let's talk about each one. Fear is a powerful force. It keeps us safe in dangerous situations, but it can also hold us back from taking necessary risks. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, these fears can paralyze us if we let them. But here's the truth. On the other side of fear is growth. Every time you face your fears and push through them, you become stronger, more resilient, more capable. Comfort is another barrier. Humans naturally seek comfort. We want things to be easy, convenient, comfortable. But growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. Growth happens when you push beyond your limits, when you challenge yourself, when you do the uncomfortable things that others aren't willing to do. And then there's immediate gratification, the desire for instant results. We live in a world of instant everything, instant messages, instant meals, instant entertainment. But success doesn't happen instantly. It's the result of consistent effort over time. It's the accumulated effect of all those days when you forced yourself to keep going when you didn't feel like it. You know, I often tell the story of the Chinese bamboo tree. For the first 4 years after planting, you see no visible signs of growth. But in the 5th year, the bamboo tree grows up to 80 feet in just 6 weeks. Was the growth only in the 5th year? No, of course not. For those first 4 years, the tree was developing a root system strong enough to support its eventual growth. Success works the same way. You might not see immediate results from your efforts, but that doesn't mean they're not making a difference. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a woman who had lost 100 pounds. I asked her what was the hardest part. And do you know what she said? She said, the hardest part wasn't the diet or the exercise. The hardest part was dealing with the voices in my head telling me to quit, telling me it wasn't worth it, telling me I couldn't do it. But she forced herself to keep going day after day, and eventually she achieved what once seemed impossible. That's what I want for you. I want you to achieve what seems impossible right now. And the only way to do that is to force yourself to keep going, especially on the days when you don't feel like it. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not. If it were easy, everyone would do it. But that's precisely what makes it valuable. The things that are hardest to do are often the most rewarding. The challenges that require the most from us are the ones that help us grow the most. Let me share with you some practical strategies to help you force yourself to keep going when everything inside you wants to quit. First, remember your why. Why did you start this journey in the first place? What's driving you? What's at stake if you give up? When your why is strong enough, it can pull you through the toughest times. So remind yourself daily of why you're doing what you're doing. Second, break big goals into smaller steps. Sometimes we quit because the goal seems too big, too overwhelming. But any goal, no matter how big, can be broken down into smaller, manageable steps. Focus on the next step, not the entire journey. Third, build a support system. Surround yourself with people who believe in you, who encourage you, who hold you accountable. It's much easier to force yourself to keep going when you have others supporting you along the way. Fourth, celebrate your progress. Don't wait until you've reached your ultimate goal to celebrate. Celebrate the small victories along the way. They'll give you the encouragement and motivation to keep going. Fifth, develop routines and habits. When something becomes a habit, it requires less willpower to do it. So create routines that support your goals and make them as automatic as possible. And sixth, learn to embrace discomfort. Instead of avoiding discomfort, recognize it as a sign of growth. When you feel resistance, that's a sign that you're pushing beyond your current limits. That's a good thing. Let me tell you about a principle that has guided me throughout my life, the principle of continuous improvement. The Japanese call it kaizen. It's the idea that you don't have to make huge, dramatic changes all at once. You just need to get a little better each day. Imagine improving just 1% each day. That might not seem like much, but over the course of a year, you'll be 37 times better than when you started. That's the power of continuous improvement. That's the power of forcing yourself to keep going day after day. You know, I've noticed something interesting in my years of study. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but they vastly underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. Why? Because they don't appreciate the power of compound growth over time. Imagine planting a seed and then checking it every hour to see if it's grown. You'd get discouraged pretty quickly. But if you planted that seed, nurtured it consistently, and gave it time to grow, eventually you'd have a mighty tree. Success works the same way. It requires patience, persistence, and the willingness to keep going even when you don't see immediate results. I want to talk to you about something that's rarely discussed in conversations about success, the role of mental fortitude. Mental fortitude is the ability to endure difficult circumstances without giving up. It's the inner strength that allows you to face adversity head on and come out stronger on the other side. You see, life will test you. It will throw challenges your way that seem insurmountable. It will present you with opportunities disguised as obstacles. And in those moments, your mental fortitude, your ability to force yourself to keep going, will determine whether you break through or break down. I once met a man who had failed in business not once, not twice, but 7 times before finally succeeding on his 8th attempt. I asked him what kept you going after so many failures, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, I never saw them as failures. I saw them as education. Each failure taught me something valuable that I needed to know for my eventual success. That's mental fortitude. That's the ability to reframe challenges as opportunities, to see failures as stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. And that's what you need to develop if you want to force yourself to keep going when everything inside you wants to quit. You know, I've studied successful people for decades, and I've found that they all share this common trait. They persist long after others have given up. They understand that success is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And in a marathon, it's not the fastest starter who wins, it's the one who maintains a steady pace throughout the entire race. Think about it, most people quit just before they're about to break through. They put in months or even years of effort, but then they hit a plateau or face a significant setback and they give up. But what they don't realize is that these plateaus and setbacks are often the precursors to major breakthroughs. If only they had forced themselves to keep going a little longer, they might have achieved the success they were seeking. I want to share with you a concept that has helped me enormously in my own life, the concept of the second wind. In long-distance running, there's a phenomenon where runners, after feeling exhausted and ready to quit, suddenly get a surge of new energy, a second wind that allows them to finish the race. Life works the same way. You'll face periods where you feel exhausted, where you feel like you can't go on. But if you force yourself to keep going, you'll often discover a second wind, a new source of energy and motivation that you didn't know you had. But you'll never experience that second wind if you quit when you feel the first wave of exhaustion. Now, I want to be clear about something. Forcing yourself to keep going doesn't mean ignoring your physical and mental health. It doesn't mean pushing yourself to the point of burnout. It means persisting through the normal resistance that comes with any worthwhile endeavor. It means refusing to let temporary discomfort deter you from your long-term goals. Let me tell you about a study that was done on elite musicians. Researchers found that what separated the best musicians from the rest wasn't natural talent or intelligence. It was the amount of deliberate practice they engaged in. And here's the key: deliberate practice isn't fun. It's hard, focused work on the areas where you're weakest. It's forcing yourself to keep going when you'd rather do something else, but it's also what leads to mastery. The same principle applies to any field, any goal, any endeavor. If you want to achieve something significant, you need to be willing to put in the hours of deliberate practice, especially when it's difficult. I often use the metaphor of farming when talking about success. A farmer doesn't plant seeds and then harvest the next day. There's a season for planting, a season for nurturing, and a season for harvesting. And during the nurturing season, there are days when it doesn't look like anything is happening. The seeds are underground, developing roots, preparing to sprout. But the farmer doesn't quit because he can't see immediate results. He forces himself to keep going, trusting the process, knowing that the harvest will come in due time. Your life works the same way. There are seasons of planting, seasons of nurturing, and seasons of harvesting. And during those nurturing seasons, when progress seems slow or non-existent, you need to force yourself to keep going, trusting the process, knowing that your harvest will come. Let me share with you a principle that has guided many successful people, the principle of front-loading. Front-loading means doing the hard work up front so that you can enjoy the benefits later. It means sacrificing now for a better future. It means forcing yourself to keep going today so that tomorrow can be better. Most people do the opposite. They choose immediate pleasure at the expense of long-term satisfaction. They take the easy path now, only to face a harder path later. But successful people, those who achieve their goals and live their dreams, understand the power of front-loading. They're willing to do what others won't do today so that they can have what others won't have tomorrow. I often talk about the law of sowing and reaping. This universal law states that you reap what you sow. You reap after you sow, and you reap more than you sow. In other words, your actions determine your outcomes. Those outcomes don't come immediately. And when they do come, they're multiplied. This law applies to every area of life. If you want better relationships, you need to sow seeds of kindness, respect, and love. If you want better health, you need to sow seeds of proper nutrition, regular exercise, and adequate rest. If you want better finances, you need to sow seeds of hard work, wise investment, and disciplined spending. But here's the challenge. There's a gap between sowing and reaping. And in that gap, doubt creeps in. You start questioning whether your efforts are worth it. You start wondering if you're on the right path. You start contemplating quitting. And it's in that gap, that critical space between effort and outcome, that your ability to force yourself to keep going makes all the difference. I want to tell you about a concept that has been incredibly valuable to me, the concept of emotional management. You see, emotions are powerful forces. They can drive us forward or they can hold us back. They can be our greatest allies or our worst enemies. And the key to success is in avoiding negative emotions. It's learning to manage them. When you feel fear, acknowledge it, but don't let it stop you. When you feel doubt, recognize it, but don't let it derail you. When you feel tired, honor it, but don't let it become an excuse for quitting. Emotional management is about using your emotions as information, not as dictators of your actions. You know, I've found that one of the most important skills you can develop is the ability to delay gratification. In a world that's increasingly focused on instant results, the ability to wait to force yourself to keep going, even when rewards aren't immediate, is a rare and valuable skill. There's a famous study called the Stanford Marshmallow Experiment. Children were given a choice. They could have 1 marshmallow now, or 2 marshmallows if they could wait 15 minutes. The researchers then followed these children for decades, and they found something remarkable. The children who were able to wait for the second marshmallow generally had better life outcomes. They had higher SAT scores, lower levels of substance abuse, lower likelihood of obesity, better social skills, and more. What does this tell us? It tells us that the ability to delay gratification, to force yourself to keep going even when rewards aren't immediate, is a predictor of future success. It's a skill worth developing. Let me share with you a truth that has guided me throughout my life. The path to success is rarely a straight line. It's more like a winding road with ups and downs, twists and turns. There will be hills to climb, valleys to traverse, obstacles to overcome. And on this journey, there will be many points where the easy thing to do is to quit. But the right thing to do, the thing that leads to growth, achievement, and fulfillment, is to force yourself to keep going. I want to talk to you about a concept that's central to long-term success: self-discipline. Self-discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's about directing yourself. It's about choosing what you want most over what you want now. It's about forcing yourself to keep going toward your goals, even when distractions and temptations try to pull you off course. You know, the word discipline comes from the Latin word disciplina, which means instruction or teaching. So self-discipline is quite literally self-teaching. You're teaching yourself to act in ways that serve your long-term goals rather than your short-term desires. You're teaching yourself to value progress over comfort, growth over ease. And here's the beautiful thing about self-discipline: it's a transferable skill. When you develop self-discipline in one area of your life, it becomes easier to apply it in other areas. When you force yourself to keep going with your morning exercise routine, for instance, it becomes easier to force yourself to keep going with your evening study sessions. Self-discipline creates a positive spillover effect in your life. Let me tell you about a principle that many successful people understand: the principle of momentum. In physics, momentum is the product of mass and velocity. The more momentum an object has, the harder it is to stop. The same is true in your life and your endeavors. When you first start a new habit or pursue a new goal, it's difficult. You have no momentum. But as you force yourself to keep going day after day, you build momentum. And the more momentum you build, the easier it becomes to continue. The key is to never allow yourself to come to a complete stop, because once you stop, you'll need to overcome inertia to get moving again. Think about a train. When a train is at rest, it takes an enormous amount of energy to get it moving. But once it's moving, it takes much less energy to keep it moving. And the faster it goes, the more momentum it builds, and the harder it becomes to stop. Your goals, your habits, your progress, they all work the same way. The hardest part is starting. But once you've started, once you've built some momentum, it becomes easier to keep going. I want to share with you a truth that has been proven time and again in the lives of successful people: consistency beats intensity. It's not about doing extraordinary things occasionally, it's about doing ordinary things consistently. Imagine 2 people, one who works out intensely for 3 hours once a month, and another who works out moderately for 30 minutes every day. Who do you think will see better results? Of course, it's the second person. Why? Because consistency beats intensity. The same principle applies to any goal you're pursuing. It's not about taking massive action once in a while. It's about taking consistent action every day. It's about forcing yourself to keep going in day out regardless of how you feel. You know, I often use the metaphor of a water drill when talking about persistence. If you want to drill for water, you don't drill 6 1-foot holes in different places. You drill 1 6-foot hole in one place. You keep drilling at the same spot until you hit water. Success works the same way. You don't jump from goal to goal, from opportunity to opportunity. You choose your spot and you keep drilling. You force yourself to keep going in the same direction until you hit your version of water, your success. Let me tell you about a concept that has been transformative in my own life: the concept of marginal gains. Marginal gains is the idea that small, incremental improvements can lead to significant results over time. Imagine improving just 1% each day. That might not seem like much, but over the course of a year, you'll be 37 times better than when you started. That's the power of marginal gains. That's the power of forcing yourself to keep going, day after day, making small improvements along the way. The British cycling team used this principle to transform from mediocrity to dominance. They focused on making 1% improvements in everything they did: nutrition, training, recovery, equipment, even the pillows they slept on. And the result? They became one of the most successful cycling teams in history, winning multiple Olympic gold medals and Tour de France titles. You can apply the same principle to your life. Instead of trying to make dramatic changes all at once, focus on small, consistent improvements. Force yourself to keep going, day after day, getting just a little bit better each time. Over time, these small improvements will compound, leading to remarkable results. I want to share with you a truth that has guided me throughout my life. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions. And the quality of your decisions is determined by your ability to think long term, to consider not just the immediate outcomes of your actions, but the eventual outcomes as well. Most people make decisions based on what feels good in the moment. They choose immediate pleasure over long-term satisfaction. They choose convenience over growth. They choose comfort over progress. But successful people, those who achieve their goals and live their dreams, make decisions based on their vision for the future. They're willing to endure short-term discomfort for long-term gain. They force themselves to keep going, not because it's easy, but because they know it's worth it. You know, one of the most important skills you can develop is the ability to manage your internal dialogue. We all have an inner voice that's constantly commenting on our experiences, interpreting events, and shaping our responses. And this inner voice can either be your greatest ally or your worst enemy in your journey to success. When you face challenges or setbacks, your inner voice might say things like, "This is too hard. You can't do this. You should just quit." And in those moments, you have a choice. You can believe that voice and give up, or you can challenge it. You can say, "Yes, this is hard, but I can do hard things. Yes, I might feel like quitting, but I'm going to force myself to keep going." The way you talk to yourself matters. It shapes your beliefs, your actions, and ultimately your outcomes. So be mindful of your internal dialogue. Be your own biggest supporter, not your own worst critic. Force yourself to keep going, not through harsh self-criticism, but through compassionate self-encouragement. Let me tell you about a principle that has been vital to my own success, the principle of resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover from setbacks, adapt to change, and keep going despite difficulties. It's not about avoiding hardship. It's about using hardship as a catalyst for growth. Resilient people don't see challenges as barriers to success. They see them as opportunities for growth. They don't view setbacks as failures. They view them as feedback. They don't allow difficulties to defeat them. They use difficulties to develop them. And most importantly, they don't quit when things get tough. They force themselves to keep going, knowing that on the other side of the difficulty is growth. You know, I often tell the story of Thomas Edison, who failed thousands of times before successfully inventing the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's resilience. That's the ability to keep going despite setbacks, to learn from failures rather than being defeated by them. I want to share with you a truth that has been proven time and again in the lives of successful people. The path to success is paved with discomfort. If you're not experiencing discomfort, you're not growing. If you're not pushing your limits, you're not expanding your capabilities. If you're not forcing yourself to keep going when you want to quit, you're not developing the resilience you need for long-term success. Discomfort is not the enemy of progress. It's the catalyst for growth. It's the signal that you're pushing beyond your current limits, that you're challenging your current capabilities, that you're growing. So instead of avoiding discomfort, learn to embrace it. See it as a sign that you're on the right path, that you're making progress, that you're growing. Let me tell you about a concept that has been instrumental in my own life, the concept of the growth mindset. The growth mindset, as coined by psychologist Carol Dweck, is the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. It's the understanding that you're not limited by your current capabilities, that you can grow, learn, and improve over time. People with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to grow, not as threats to their identity. They view effort as the path to mastery, not as a sign of incapacity. They learn from criticism instead of avoiding it. And most importantly, they force themselves to keep going in the face of setbacks and challenges, knowing that persistence is the key to growth. You know, I've noticed something interesting in my years of study. The people who achieve the most are not necessarily the most talented or the most intelligent. They're the ones who refuse to give up, They're the ones who force themselves to keep going when others would quit. They're the ones who understand that persistence is the bridge between where they are and where they want to be. I want to share with you a principle that has guided many successful people, the principle of deliberate practice. Deliberate practice isn't just about putting in the hours, it's about putting in the right kind of hours. It's about focusing intentionally on the areas where you need to improve, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, and seeking feedback to refine your approach. Most people practice in their comfort zone. They do what they're already good at, what's easy for them, what feels comfortable. But growth doesn't happen in your comfort zone. Growth happens when you force yourself to do what's difficult, what challenges you, what pushes you to the edge of your current capabilities. Let me tell you about a concept that has been transformative in my own life, the concept of the locus of control. The locus of control refers to where you believe power resides in your life. People with an internal locus of control believe that they have power over their circumstances, that their actions determine their outcomes. People with an external locus of control believe that they are at the mercy of their circumstances, that their outcomes are determined by external forces beyond their control. Research consistently shows that people with an internal locus of control tend to be more successful, more satisfied, and more resilient in the face of challenges. Why? Because they take responsibility for their circumstances. They don't make excuses, they make changes. They don't blame others, they empower themselves. And most importantly, they force themselves to keep going, even when circumstances are difficult, because they believe in their ability to create positive change through persistent effort. You know, I found that one of the most important skills you can develop is the ability to manage your energy. We all have limited energy, and how we allocate that energy determines what we can accomplish. Successful people understand this. They don't squander their energy on things that don't matter. They invest it in activities that move them closer to their goals. This means being intentional about what you say yes to and what you say no to. It means prioritizing activities that energize you and minimizing activities that drain you. It means structuring your day to align with your natural energy rhythms. And most importantly, it means forcing yourself to keep going even when you feel tired by finding ways to renew your energy rather than deplete it. I want to share with you a truth that has been proven time and again in the lives of successful people. Your environment shapes your behavior. The people you surround yourself with, the places you spend your time, the information you consume, they all influence your thoughts, your actions, and ultimately your outcomes. If you want to force yourself to keep going when things get tough, create an environment that supports that goal. Surround yourself with people who inspire and encourage you. Design your physical space to minimize distractions and maximize focus. Consume information that fuels your motivation and strengthens your resolve. Your environment can either make it easier or harder to keep going. Choose wisely. Let me tell you about a principle that has been vital to my own success, the principle of accountability. Accountability is the willingness to take responsibility for your actions and their outcomes. It's the understanding that you are the author of your life story, that your choices determine your circumstances, that your persistent efforts create your results. When you embrace accountability, you stop making excuses and start making progress. You stop blaming circumstances and start changing them. You stop waiting for things to happen and start making things happen. And most importantly, you force yourself to keep going even when things get tough, because you know that your consistent effort is the key to creating the outcomes you desire. You know, I've noticed something interesting in my years of study. The most successful people don't just work hard, they work smart. They understand that it's not about the quantity of hours you put in, it's about the quality of those hours. It's about focusing your efforts on the activities that produce the greatest results. This is the essence of the Pareto principle, also known as the 80/20 rule, which states that roughly 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. In the context of your goals, this means that approximately 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities. The key then is to identify that vital 20% and focus your energy there. But here's the challenge: that vital 20% is often the most difficult, the most uncomfortable, the most resistance-inducing. It's the part that makes you want to quit. And that's where your ability to force yourself to keep going makes all the difference. I want to share with you a concept that has been transformative in my own life, the concept of deep work. Deep work, as coined by author Cal Newport, is the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's the skill that allows you to quickly master complicated information and produce better results in less time. In our increasingly distracted world, the ability to engage in deep work is becoming rarer and more valuable. Most people jump from task to task, constantly interrupted by notifications, emails, and other distractions. But those who can force themselves to focus deeply on important tasks, to keep going despite the pull of distraction, are the ones who stand out, who excel, who achieve their goals. Let me tell you about a principle that has guided many successful people, the principle of compound effort. Just as money compounds over time in a good investment, effort compounds over time in a worthwhile endeavor. Small, consistent efforts maintained over a long period can lead to remarkable results. This is why it's so crucial to force yourself to keep going day after day, even when progress seems slow or non-existent. You're not just putting in effort, you're investing in compound growth. You're laying the groundwork for future success that might be greater than you can currently imagine. You know, I've found that one of the most important skills you can develop is the ability to adapt and pivot. In our rapidly changing world, the ability to adjust your approach in response to new information, new challenges, and new opportunities is invaluable. But here's the key. Adapting doesn't mean abandoning your goals. It means finding new paths to those goals when the original path becomes blocked. It means being flexible about your methods while remaining committed to your objectives. It means forcing yourself to keep going, not necessarily in the same direction, but toward the same destination. I want to share with you a truth that has been proven time and again in the lives of successful people. Your habits shape your destiny. Small daily actions repeated consistently over time create your outcomes. It's not the occasional big effort that determines your success. It's the consistent small efforts that you force yourself to maintain day in and day out. This is why developing positive habits is so crucial. When something becomes a habit, it requires less willpower to do it. It becomes automatic, routine, part of who you are. And when forcing yourself to keep going becomes a habit, when persistence becomes part of your identity, that's when remarkable things begin to happen. Let me tell you about a concept that has been instrumental in my own life, the concept of keystone habits. Keystone habits, as identified by author Charles Duhigg, are habits that have the power to start a chain reaction, changing other habits as they move through your life. For example, regular exercise might be a keystone habit. When you force yourself to exercise regularly, you might also start eating better, sleeping better, and feeling more confident. The habit of daily reflection might lead to better decision making, increased self-awareness, and improved relationships. By focusing on developing a few key habits, you can create positive ripple effects throughout your life. You know, I've noticed something interesting in my years of study. The people who achieve the most don't just set goals, they create systems. They understand that goals are about the destination, but systems are about the journey. Goals provide direction, but systems provide progress. And it's through consistent adherence to effective systems, through forcing yourself to keep going with your daily habits and routines, that you achieve your goals. I want to share with you a principle that has guided many successful people, the principle of the slight edge. The slight edge, as coined by author Jeff Olson, is the idea that small, seemingly insignificant actions